Joe Biden goes off the rails in Philadelphia. Democratic lawmakers flee Texas in a private jet like it's 1968 all over again. And Kamala Harris thinks rural people in the United States are all hicks from the sticks. I'm Rob Carson. Glad to have you along here. Now, this week, Pennsylvania Senator Doug Mastriano demanded an audit of the state's 2020 election. Joe Biden flew to Philadelphia faster than he flies to an ice cream joint to defile the recount effort in the very worst way possible.
Assault on free and fair elections is just such a threat, literally. I've said it before. We're facing the most significant test of our democracy since the Civil War. That's not hyperbole. Since the Civil War. The Confederates, back then, never breached the Capitol, as insurrectionists did on January the 6th.
Yeah, that's certainly not hyperbole. Voting integrity worse than the Civil War, an attack on the country like the Civil War. That would be like a Japanese politician calling voting reform worse than Nagasaki and Hiroshima combined. And with any Biden speech, he got bumbly and fumbly.
All told, more than 150 Americans of every age, of every race, of every background, exercise their right to vote.
No, actually, I think what he meant to say is many Democrats voted 150 times.
They voted early. They voted absentee.
They voted often. Are you guys ready for some hot Psaki? Jen Psaki echoed the same disgusting talking point the day before.
And he will highlight the work of the administration against this, the necessity of passing the For the People Act and the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, and how we need to work together with civil rights organizations to build as broad a turnout and voter education system to overcome the worst challenge to our democracy since the Civil War.
Now, Jen also let it slip that the president may not actually write his own statements.
We, of course, are monitoring closely. You saw the statement the president, we put out in the president's name this morning, in his voice, of course.
I got to hear that again. I don't. I mean, it's like, well, yeah, okay, and I got to kind of cover up because he didn't actually say anything.
And closely, you saw the statement the president, we put out in the president's name this morning, in his voice, of course, conveying his support for the people of Cuba.
Yeah, we made it sound just like he actually wrote it, but he doesn't really write anything of his own because, you know, the president accidentally said the quiet stuff out loud when he literally, I'm not kidding, literally paraphrased Joseph Stalin.
It's no longer just about who gets to vote or making it easier for eligible voters to vote. It's about who gets to count the vote. Who gets to count whether or not your vote counted at all.
There you go. It's not how you voted. It's who counts the vote. Stalin said the same thing pretty much. Wow, wow, wow. All this kind of makes you wonder, what is he trying to hide and what is he scared of?
We're going to face another test in 2022, a new wave of unprecedented voter suppression and raw and sustained election subversion.
Of course, we have no intelligence that this is going to happen. Actually, we just don't have any intelligence.
We have to prepare now.
If we're going to steal in another election, we got to get busy.
Said time and again, no matter what, you can never stop the American people from voting. They will decide.
2022. That's what they're afraid of. In case you missed it, the Cuban people are throwing the biggest protest in the last 60 years because they're tired of the totalitarian Castro regime that's impoverished and imprisoned the Cuban people for 60 years. A Biden State Department official tweeted that it was all about coronavirus, and Jen Psaki was asked about that.
And then on Cuba, you're talking today about how some of these protests are inspired by people exhausted with the government. Why is it that yesterday the State Department was saying that this was all happening out of concern about rising COVID cases?
Well, I would say first that the protests were just happening yesterday.
Because those kind of protests would be happening around the world if it was about, COVID cases.
We're still assessing what is motivating and, of course, and driving all of the individuals who came to the streets.
All the starvation and the stuff and the political prisons, and
But we know that when we say exhaustion, the manner by which the people of Cuba are governed, that can cover a range of issues, whether it's economic suppression, media suppression, lack of access to health and medical supplies, including vaccines.
Living in slums.
There are a range of reasons and voices we're hearing from people on the ground who are protesting.
So when these protesters are yelling freedom and enough, there are people within the administration who think they're saying freedom from rising COVID cases.
Again, I would say that when people are out there in the streets protesting and complaining about the lack of access to economic prosperity, to the medical supplies they need.
Swing and a miss, ladies and gentlemen. Then she went on to read a very scripted answer. Instead of sharing outrage we all have with regard to Cuba's murderous communist history.
Do you anticipate making any changes, as Jonathan asked, and where do you see it going from here?
Well, I will say first, and I meant to say this in response to Jonathan, but there's every indication that yesterday's protests were spontaneous expressions of people who are exhausted with the Cuban government's economic mismanagement and repression. And these are protests inspired by the harsh reality of everyday life.
Wow, she's so passionate about it.
In Cuba, not people in another country.
Since mainstream media and Jen Psaki can't figure out what the revolution is about, here's an actual Cuban protester telling us in real time.
Estamos aquí por la represión que hay con el pueblo, que nos tienen matándonos de hambre, toda La Habana entera se está derrumbando y estamos
Not seeing COVID mentioned yet.
sin casa, sin nada, tienen dinero para construirlo.
Not seeing anything about the vaccine yet.
Hoteles para construir de todo. Y a nosotros nos tienen pasando hambre y tremendo trabajo.
Coming up, Texas state legislators take an unpaid vacation to the swamp and avoid doing what they're supposed to do in the legislature. Stick around. And we are back. Make sure to check out the Newsmax Daily Podcast with me, Rob Carson. Just go to Apple Podcasts and sign up. And you can hear the Newsmax Daily with Rob Carson. It's really awesome. I think you'll like it. I don't know if you know this, but for over 50 years, Cubans have escaped communism on rafts through shark-infested waters. Here's Newsmax own Benny Johnson sharing what he's seen since he moved to Miami.
Find me the raft. I want to know. I want to see the raft of someone who built a raft to escape capitalism. Show me.
I'm making too much money. I got to go to Cuba and be impoverished.
I want to find a single raft. I now live in Florida. I am in an empty house in an empty room because I just moved into our new home in Florida. I can show you an entire pile of rafts in Miami from people treading through shark-infested waters to escape the human carnage of socialism and communism.
But wait, the Democrats say America sucks. That doesn't make any sense. Other than that, Cuba is really awesome. Here's Marco Rubio with some perspective.
Since very early this morning, we've been seeing images out of Cuba, people in the street protesting, and they've been chanting, "We are not afraid." And why are they in the street? They're in the street because they seek freedom. What they seek to do basically is to live in a normal country. What they're tired of...
No, it's about COVID vaccines. Did you not hear Jen Psaki?
...is having to be the people that can only achieve their dreams by going somewhere else. Why can Cubans achieve all kinds of things all over the world, including here in the United States, but they can't do it inside of Cuba? They're tired of living under tyranny, and they're tired of living under incompetent leaders. That's what the Cuban regime is. Because socialism and Marxism doesn't work. It's a failure. It's a failure everywhere it's been tried, and it's having a catastrophic impact on the people of Cuba.
Don't tell that to Democrat Bernie Sanders, who actually honeymooned in the former Soviet Union and preaches socialism while owning 4 houses. He shared his admiration for much of what Castro did.
Let's not get into red baiting here. Here is the truth. Everybody knows it. Cuba is a very poor country. Its economy is in very bad shape.
Because of socialism.
It is an authoritarian society. Do I support...
Which generally socialism is.
Their economic policies or their political policies? Of course I don't. But you know what else? Cuba produces a lot of physicians in this country. And you know where they go? They go to poor countries around the world doing a lot of good.
You ever heard Doctors Without Borders? That's from here.
I wish we had physicians in this country. The number of physicians that we need to go to poor countries around the world.
Well, we actually do, actually.
By and large, Cuba's educational system for a poor country is pretty good. When Castro came to power, they did a lot to eliminate illiteracy in...
Because you got to be able to read the propaganda.
...that country. So yes, you know, you don't have to praise everything about Fidel Castro.
And if you're like any decent American, you wouldn't praise anything that Fidel Castro did in Cuba. Texas Democrat lawmakers abandoned their duties and left Texas to avoid voting on voting integrity bills, and they followed in the footsteps of MLK by hopping on 2 private jets, costing $100,000, not wearing masks, and bringing a case of bad beer. Yeah, it's just like Selma. Here's one of them explaining why they had to take private jets.
And so these are private planes. Is there a reason why you all flew together on charter planes instead of flying commercially?
Absolutely. Number one, you know, when you break a quorum, you want to be successful. So I think everybody wants to see, you
51, 52, 55 Democrats on the same plane.
Yeah, it's got to be a private plane. It's got to, yeah.
That's reassuring. Number two,
it's really reassuring.
To get a flight out of town at a time certain with, getting everybody to come in from across the state, you need to fly privately.
No, there's a whole bunch of airlines that you could book flights on.
And as you can see from the picture, we're talking about using the same kind of plane that the public uses every day.
Except for it's private. And there are no masks.
There's no fancy couches or anything like that. This was just a regular plane that moved us from one state to another.
Here's John Cornyn talking about the Democrats' brave private jet flight and the vote in Texas to arrest them.
They got on 2 chartered jets, maskless, with at least 1 case of light beer.
Yeah, it's not even good beer.
And hopped on the jets to come to Washington, D.C.
Mr. Speakers, I move that the Sergeant-at-Arms or officers appointed by him send for all absentees who in attendance is not excused for the purpose of securing and maintaining their absence.
That means because they left the state, when they come back to the state, they're going to get arrested. Let's face it, the Texas Dems flew out of Texas like a group of college students on spring break, but that didn't stop them from butchering a powerful song that galvanized people during the civil rights movement and getting the lyrics completely wrong.
We will overcome. We will overcome. We will overcome.
Yeah, it's we shall overcome. I'm a white boy from Iowa, and I even knew that.
Overcome someday, deep in our heart.
And that's when it completely falls apart.
I do believe we will overcome someday.
Yeah. I've never flown on a private jet. What amazing hurdles the 2021 Democrats have to jump. One Texas Democrat even said she was being held hostage in Austin.
And I'm up here because I don't plan to be a sitting
Do you plan on being a standing
person in that legislature.
Oh, okay.
I'm not going to be a sitting.
You ain't no sitting duck.
I'm not.
Not going to be a sitting duck.
I'm not going to be a hostage.
Yeah, she's a hostage. Okay. Here's Texas Governor Greg Abbott's response to the derelict Democrats.
The Texas Democrats' decision to break a quorum of the Texas legislature and to abandon the Texas state capitol, that inflicts harm on the very Texans who elected them to serve. As they fly across the country on cushy private planes, they leave undone issues that can help their districts as well as help the entire state.
The Democrat Party has made it clear they don't think people of color are bright enough to get an ID or vote. This week, Kamala Harris also disparaged rural voters who she thinks can't make a photocopy of their driver's license.
Is agreeing to voter ID one of those compromises that you'd support? I don't think that we should underestimate what that could mean. Because in some people's mind, that means, well, you're going to have to Xerox or photocopy your ID to send.
Wow, I have not heard the word Xerox in years.
Send it in to prove you are who you are. Well, there are a whole lot of people, especially people who live in rural communities, who don't. There's no Kinko's, there's no Office Max near them. They
don't wear shoes. They dangle banjos off bridges.
Have to understand that when we're talking about voter ID laws, be clear about who you have in mind and what would be required of them.
Yeah, Kinko's went away 17 years ago, by the way. Here's a Wisconsin Republican setting the record straight that rural voters aren't all hicks from the sticks.
During multiple hearings, my Democratic colleagues have claimed that voter ID is used to suppress votes. However, the data clearly disputes this. Contrary to Democratic claim, voter ID requirements of lowering voter turnout, states with voter ID laws saw record turnout in the 2020 election.
What?
And I thought I would take this opportunity during a remote hearing to take everyone on the committee to rural America.
That's a cornfield for all you city folks.
While I haven't found a Kinko's, the Vice President of the United States may be very interested to learn that I can confirm folks in rural Wisconsin and rural communities across the United States have running water, have electricity, and I found this new invention that I don't think was there.
And not the best cell reception.
When Vice President Biden first ran for Senate, but is available now here in rural America, and it's called a camera phone. It's amazing. It has a camera and a phone.
Yeah.
And it can actually take a photo of an ID.
Hey, man, I ain't never seen one of them before.
And can be submitted electronically. Shocking, I know. Now, it may not have come to San Francisco, so Vice President Kamala Harris may not be as familiar I encourage everyone to check out these new camera phones that can be used to provide enhanced integrity in our elections for people voting by mail remotely in rural America.
Coming up,
and so
the next tactic for the Biden administration for those who refuse the vaccination is to make the unvaccinated lives a living hell. Stick around. And I am so back, it's not even funny. But what is funny is the Newsmax Daily Podcast. I do it 5 days a week. You can check it out on Apple Podcasts and subscribe. The Newsmax Daily with Rob Carson. There's been a lot of talk about pressuring or even mandating the COVID vaccine for those who refuse to take it. But Dr. Lena Wynn took the cake when she said the government should make the lives of the unvaccinated a living hell.
What we really need to do at this point is to make vaccination the easy choice. It needs to be hard for people to remain unvaccinated. Right now, it's kind of the opposite. It's fine. I mean, it's easy if you're unvaccinated. You can do everything you want to do anyway.
You don't have to have your fingernails pulled out. Did I say that out loud?
But at some point, these mandates by workplaces, by schools, I think it will be important to say, hey, you can opt out, but if you want to opt out, you have to sign these forms. You have to get twice weekly testing. Basically, we need to make getting vaccinated the easy choice. That is what it's going to take for us to actually end the pandemic.
Wow, that's kind of scary, actually. Statist mouthpiece Gayle King went so far as to say she'd ban her own relatives from Thanksgiving if they refuse the jab.
But community people to go out there and try and convince people why it's so important for their own health, for that of their family, and for that of the community to go out and get vaccinated. We really need to get more.
Have you noticed he's only doing interviews with friendly media?
People vaccinated, because that's the solution.
Yeah.
This virus will, in fact, be protected against by the vaccine.
Dr. Fauci, I don't know how many more times you can say to people, listen, it will save your life. I have this problem with some members of my own family, which I'm now going to ban for Thanksgiving vacation.
That's okay. I've heard your stuffing sucks anyway. Dr. Fauci also said it's time for your toddlers to mask up.
The children who are not able to get vaccinated because of their age should follow, their parents should follow with them, the guidelines of the CDC.
These are like kids 3 and under. It's, putting a mask on them is like, I don't know, taking your cat for a walk on a leash.
Unvaccinated children of a certain age, greater than 2 years old, should be wearing masks. No doubt.
You can't even get them to do that on Halloween.
Out about that. That's the way to protect them from getting infected, because if they do, they can then spread the infection to someone else. So the CDC guidelines for unvaccinated people, including children, are not changed at all.
Wow, he is relentless, isn't he? Dr. Jill Biden appeared on Sesame Street this week with a Latino monster. I didn't know that they could be different ethnicities, but that's okay. That's okay. To talk about self-esteem and other indoctrination of our kids.
Hi, Rosita. What are you doing?
Oh, hello.
Of course, you can't be Latino unless you have a name like Rosita.
Oh, Dr. Biden. Oh, well, I was just thinking of all the things that make me proud to be me. Yeah, it's a little project that I'm doing with my military kid friends.
This is called overinflating your self-esteem.
That's wonderful. So what's on your list so far?
Oh, let me see. Okay. Ooh, I am so proud that I have a puppy who served in the military.
That's good. That's good.
Let me see. Ooh.
I didn't know we had any monsters in the military, but that's cool.
I am so proud that I'm a Mexican American. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And there's another thing that I'm very proud, Dr. Biden. Actually, I just learned that, and it's that I am an upstander. That means that I use kind words and actions to stand up for myself and my friends.
That's so nice. And we all know that Jill Biden is way down with the Latino constituency.
So say it with me. Si se puede. The future is ours. Thank you.
Clearly, her doctorate is not in international studies. I believe she said, I like pudding there. I'm not sure.
Hey, I'm Rob Finnerty. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please join the conversation in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe, too. Hit the bell icon to be alerted to breaking news. And remember, there's a whole lot more on Newsmax TV, America's fastest growing cable news network. Newsmax TV, we're real news for real people.